Good morning, first period. I hope everyone is doing well today. It's great to be with you and see you. So quick overview of our day together before we get started. All right, guys, so we are going to, we are going to be this morning doing a couple of things. We're going to be doing a demonstration. I'm going to do a demo for you guys. And then we're also going to have plenty of time to finish our menu project today. So the demo, we talked about that. For those of you that come to class, my in-person learners, I'm going to bump back the caramel apples until Monday. I had already purchased everything before I found out that we were going online, but I think most of it will keep fine. So Monday we'll do caramel apples in class. But I wanted to use some of the ingredients that I purchased just in case, you know, anything would not keep very well, and give you guys a quick demo. So I'm going to make this demo this morning. I am going to make, kind of a mouthful, salted caramel apple pie bars. So what I'm going to do first, I'm going to start by making a crust for my bars out of basically shortbread. Shortbread is a lot of butter and a little flour and a little sugar. So I'm going to make a shortbread crust, bake it for a few minutes, and then I'm going to prepare my apples. I'm going to show you guys today how to core an apple, peel an apple, how to use a mandolin slicer. And then I'm going to make a filling, and I'm going to make a streusel topping. So for the ladies who were in class the other, like 2 weeks ago, when you made your blueberry and blackberry crumble, the topping is similar. It's oats, sugar, it's cold butter. It creates this crunchy, crispy top. And then I'll make a brain fart, a caramel to drizzle on top when they come out of the oven. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys several components of that in first period. And then throughout the day, I will do like some demo videos from this morning's video. Okay, so I'm going to, I'm recording, so I'm going to try to make sure that on my screen, all I can see is me so that future classes are not looking at the grid. So I might have to adjust a few things as we go this morning. Okay, on your screen, you should see me, and then you should also see my phone with a pretty up close view of the table. I might actually pin that one. There we go. All right, so now this may take me a little longer than I intend to spend with you guys. I want to give you plenty of time to work on your menu. So this morning, like while we're working, if you want to multitask and be working on your menu a bit, that's fine with me too. I don't mind. Just kind of be there for me. Like if you can answer questions, that would be great. I'm not gonna have a lot of access to my computer, so if you'll come on your microphone and just talk, that would be wonderful. Okay, so let me get everything just tweaked and then we'll start. Yes.
I have a question. Are we gonna do like a lab like you, or do we just do that project, the menu thing?
Well, you're not doing a lab at home, right? Like, no. I don't want to make sure I understand your question, Stephanie. This is just a demonstration.
Oh, okay.
So I want to
Yeah,
teach you a couple skills.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm just going to show you a couple skills, and then I want you to have plenty of time to work on your menu because I know that took a little longer than I thought it would. So what I'm saying is, I don't mind, like if you're multitasking, if you're working on your menu while you're watching the demo, like that doesn't bother me. But I'll tell you like, hey, this is really important. Like, pay attention to this to try to make sure you're with me and cued at the right times. Okay, so it may take me a longer because I'm going to do this demo. Like I'm only making this once and it's happening in your class. So I don't want to eat up all your class time. Like you must watch me 24/7. No, like do your work. But I want to share some things with you and then I'll make this into a video for the next couple classes. All right. So you guys let me know when I get started, like if you can't see right, if I need to adjust the angles, anything that would be helpful. I would super appreciate your input. Okay. All right. So actually, I'm going to stop and wash my hands one more time. Give me 1 second to do that. All right. So I thought we were going to be at school today. Originally, teachers were supposed to be on campus today. So I had already like made new plans, and then last night I found out that we were supposed to be at home. So I decided I was just going to sneak in here and film this demo in the first class and maybe head home after that. Okay. All right. So I think you can see my table pretty good. All right, good morning. So we're gonna make these salted caramel apple bars today, and we're gonna start with the crust, okay? Because the crust has to bake for about 15 minutes before we add anything to the crust, any of the apples or the streusel topping or the caramel. So before we begin, I want to make sure that you see that I have set up my mise en place. I measured everything out. I had butter that needed to be melted. I went ahead and melted it and cooled it. I even labeled, I made these yesterday, so I labeled all of my containers so I wouldn't forget like what was what and what went with what thing. I also have on my apron, I have my hands are clean, my nails are short, no nail polish, and I have my kind of headband on and my hair is back. I am hoping that I can sell these to staff members tomorrow. So that is another reason why I covered my hair. Anytime that you're going to produce food for other people, you want to have your hair covered. All right, so the first thing I'll tell you about this recipe is I tripled it. So I took everything and multiplied it times 3 because I wanted to have lots and lots of bars to offer and sell to the staff. And it didn't take too many ingredients. Now this recipe I will tell you is heavy on butter, but shortbread is largely butter. Do you guys know what I mean when I say shortbread? Have you ever had a shortbread cookie? Anybody?
I think I have.
Okay. So shortbread's kind of hard to describe. I love shortbread. It's one of my favorite things, one of my favorite cookies. It's very buttery. It's very pale. It's not even golden brown. It's just a pale cookie. It's not super readily available at the grocery store. There's a cookie called Lorna Doone. Like that's a popular nationwide brand that sells it. Shortbread is actually really popular, and I think it might even originate in Scotland. So in the grocery store, like in the fancy section of the cookie aisle, you'll see like a red plaid box that says Walker's on it, and that's shortbread. It's really yummy. Basically, it's just super buttery and then like a little bit sweet, a little bit sugary, but it's a very mild flavor. It doesn't have a lot going on. There's no chocolate chips, there's no nuts, anything like that. It's just plain shortbread. All right. So I've got my oven preheating for the shortbread. I have hopefully a big enough bowl. And I'm going to start mixing. So it tells me to stir melted butter, granulated sugar, vanilla, and salt together in a medium bowl, and then add the flour and stir until combined. And then I'm going to press it in the bottom of my baking pans. So look how much butter this is, you guys. For a triple batch. So this was 3 sticks of butter, like crazy. But that's what shortbread is, super buttery cookie. And considering that there's 3 cups of butter, there's not that much sugar. There's only 3/4 of a cup of sugar and 3 cups of flour. So the butter does most of the talking in this particular cookie, this recipe. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna pour all of my butter in my bowl. Got 1.5 sticks, another 1.5 sticks, I think 3. I set up a little miniature sink station behind me today to keep things kind of clean. I'll put that in there. Okay, and then I'm gonna add my sugar. And it said vanilla and salt. Okay, vanilla. Now the salt is kind of an issue here. Anytime that you're baking, for school, I never buy unsalted butter, and that's largely because I can buy salted butter cheaper. But a lot of recipes will ask you to use unsalted butter. They want you to control how much salt is in the final product. So if, like me, you only have salted butter or salted margarine at your house, and you find a recipe that calls for unsalted, what I would suggest that you do is just scale the salt back a little bit. So for example, this one would call for 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt. I'm gonna do kind of a big pinch of salt and call it a day because there's so much salt in the butter, okay? Do you guys know what salt does for baking? Do a little more. Salt does for baking the same thing it does for cooking, savory foods. It adds flavor. So salt makes things taste more like themselves. Which is kind of a weird concept, but it's true. All right, so I've got the wet stuff, basically a lot of butter, a little sugar. And now I'm gonna add in my 3 cups of flour. When I measured the flour, I was careful to use our proper measuring technique, right? So I took the flour, I scooped it into the measuring cup, leveled it off so that I did not have too much or too little flour because I don't want these to be like overly dense. Now this cookie is kind of, I don't know if dense is the right word. It's compact. It's not like a light, fluffy, crispy cookie. It's pretty substantial, pretty compact. I'm gonna start with about half of this flour. I'm just gonna whisk it in. I might have to switch to a rubber spatula if my whisk starts to get clumpy, like that. Okay, that's looking pretty smooth, pretty nice. Almost looks like cake batter at this point, right? Like maybe a little thin for cake batter, but definitely something that's really pourable. It actually looks a whole lot in it up close in its texture and color like applesauce. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. Add the rest of my flour. And this should turn it more into a cookie dough. Kind of a sticky doughy situation here. Yeah. Okay. Oh, it's starting to look like cookie dough. I can stick in my whisk. So I'm gonna switch real quick to a rubber spatula and get all the goop out of my whisk. Okay. Last week, my new rubber spatulas got stained pink. That's okay. They still work. Okay, so I'm just gonna kind of beat it against the bowl. Try to get this stuff out. There we go. Okay. Yeah. So you can see from the dough, I think you can see, it's actually, I mean, it almost looks a little wet or a little shiny, I think is a better word. That's from that, oh, that melted butter, okay? But it also sort of looks like a soft sugar cookie and its composition. It's a little darker in color. I think that's honestly just from so much butter, okay? So I'm gonna set that aside and I am gonna get my pan. So if I had done one batch, it calls for this. This is just an 8x8 baking pan. I actually just got this at Walmart because I was lacking in these pans. You guys, they were under $2. I was shocked how cheap this pan is. So this is 8x8. This is typically the kind of pan you would make brownies in. So it's perfect for any kind of bar. A brownie is basically a bar cookie. And then this is just a standard 9x13, which you might make a casserole in on Thanksgiving, right? Okay, So I sprayed both of my pans, and then I put parchment paper in to hang over the sides. Like I wanted to be able to lift the bar out of the pan by the parchment paper. It might get pretty sticky in the end with all the caramel and that kind of stuff. So I'm gonna kind of estimate what I think and hope is 2/3 of this dough and put it in here, and 1/3 of the dough and put it in here, since I did triple this. Okay, now I'm gonna have to use my hands a little bit. That's fine, they're clean. So my goal is gonna be to press this pretty flat and to spread it all the way across the pan. Okay. It's just a base layer, it doesn't need to be super thick, but I do want it to spread pretty evenly and make a nice rectangle shape. So I might have to go hunting for a little offset metal spatula to pull it with too, to try to really get it into the creases in the corners. Okay. It's very, it feels very greasy on my hands. That's all right. Again, that's shortbread. This is actually not this exact recipe, but I do really like making shortbread at home. It's easy. It's one of those desserts that takes very few ingredients. Now butter's kind of pricey, so it's a, you know, it's like a special treat. I make it all the time because it does require a little more butter than most cookies, but it's yummy and it keeps pretty well. I don't know about you, we don't keep cookies in our house very long. We eat cookies in our house, but if you were trying to keep them a little longer, definitely could. Okay, that's pretty good. It's actually pretty thin. Make sure it's smooth. I'm gonna say that's pretty good for that pan, okay? And then I'll go do my second one. And then I'll have to wipe all the, the shiny butter off of my hand. Let's try this one. This may be a tad thicker. Pan. All righty. So same thing, I'm just gonna use my hands to press in the dough, right? And remember guys, what we're making right now, this is not ready to eat food. So I know like right now this class is level 2, but some other, you know, more advanced classes might watch this today as well. So if you have not learned yet the difference, ready to eat food is any food that has already been cooked. And once you handle ready to eat food, it's really essential that you use gloves. But before you put food in the oven, before you cook it, clean hands are always acceptable. And that's true in any kind of facility, any restaurant, cafeteria, etc. So that's why no problem to use clean hands on the making portion of the food before it comes out of the oven or before it's ready to serve. Okay. All right. Whew, very greasy. So I've got a little one and a big one. The oven is set to 275 because the recipe calls for 300 and we're working with convection. So we set it back 25 degrees. And the recipe is saying, let's see how long, bake 15 minutes. I'm probably gonna put on about a 12-minute timer. And then I'll check my food at that point in time. So I'm gonna rinse my hands quickly, put this in the oven, and then I'll be right back with you. Okay. Very greasy. Okay. So let me get these two in. There we go. If you were making something like this at home, any bar, like if you were making a brownie and you wanted to be able to cut it really nicely, I know a lot of people in their homes don't have parchment paper. You could absolutely use aluminum foil. That would work too. Just line your pan with a big sheet of foil so that it hangs over the edges and you can grab it easily. Okay. All right. So that portion is done. We've got the crust made. Okay. Next up is working with the apples. And this is something where I want to show you a few tools and teach you a few techniques that might be new to you. Okay. So first of all, our apples, as we slice them, they're going to get tossed in a mixture. of sugar, some spices. We have cinnamon, nutmeg, and then I put a little bit of a spice called cardamom. Cardamom is a spice commonly used in Indian food. It's just kind of, it's hard to describe, but it's kind of like another warm spice like cinnamon and nutmeg are. And then we've got a little bit of flour in here. So this will coat the apples and create that like the flavor that you get in an apple pie. So essentially we're making an apple pie. We're just putting it in bar form today. So we're going to cut it into little squares when we're done. It has a cookie crust instead of a pastry crust, but we've still got the apples that are cooked the same way, and we're going to have that really yummy crumbly topping. So when I triple this, I'm looking for about 6 large apples. So I'm taking the apples that I purchased for apple, the dipping, the caramel apples, and I've already prepared some, but I've prepared 6 of them, and I'm going to show you a couple things and show you some tools. So I need you to like really tune in here, okay? I'm going to teach you a couple new tools. So I'm going to use this today, this tool. Now this is something that's fairly commonly available. I think we had one in our drawer growing up, like at my parents' house. They might still have one. I actually bought this when I was in France a year or 2 ago because I don't have one and I really liked it. And it was something that I commonly used when I was cooking because I did most of my work in a region called Normandy. And Normandy is in the north of France, and apples are one of their main products that they produce there, okay? So you might have a knife like this. If you don't, you can use a paring knife. Be careful. You can also, some of you might have like one of those, I don't think I have one at my fingertips, I'd show you, an apple corer, kind of round, almost looks like a UFO. You put it over your apple, it takes the core out and it slices them. You could definitely use that too, okay? But I'm gonna show you like by hand how to prepare an apple for pie, if you wanted to make apple pie or you were gonna make a treat like this. So the first thing that I'm going to do, I've washed the apples, of course. Now, I did not wash in hot water to remove wax because I'm going to peel them. It doesn't matter for this recipe. So you're going to go in with the tip of your apple knife, right? Ooh. And remove what you can on that side, and then flip it over and kind of repeat the process on the underside. Okay, there. Now, I don't know if you can see, maybe there's still some seeds in the middle. So I'm going to take my my knife back in there, and I'm going to kind of weasel around and try to get a little bit more of the core out, just like that. So this knife is kind of cool because it's not terribly sharp. I mean, you know, don't think it's like a samurai sword or something, but it does have, it's sharp enough on the edges that it will take things out. Like you can scrape with it, you can get some stuff out. Okay. So once I do that, I'm going to use this same tool to peel it. And this peeler, I like a lot. I normally, if I'm going to peel a vegetable, I like that Y-shaped peeler, like the ones we have at school. But I do actually like this for peeling an apple. And this is kind of handy. Like once you get the core out, you can hold it super easily. It becomes then very easy to peel the apple in just a couple of peels. Okay. So I'm going to peel a couple apples with you guys. And then I'll show you this tool that I actually brought from home called a mandolin. So I don't have a mandolin at school. I just don't have a use for one. And they're also a bit dangerous. So I've never purchased one for our kitchen, but maybe we need one. A mandolin is really cool. It's a slicer. You can make thin or thick slices of any, you know, fruit, vegetable, whatever you please with the mandolin. And then it also has like different blades that you can put in it. So you can do different styles of cuts. Like let's say you wanted to make French fries. You could put a blade in it so that it would cut into like kind of logs. All right, so I have this one cored and peeled. I'm gonna go ahead and put it, I've got some water in the sink with lemon juice so it doesn't brown too badly. Stick it in there. I'm gonna show you one more time the coring process. So just gonna go right around the core and try to get my knife in there. Kind of a satisfying sound, right? Crispy apple sound. Okay, I'm gonna go on the bottom. The same thing. Remove that core. Okay. This is pretty much standard for me, at least when I do this. I don't always line it up perfectly, so I got to go back in and get a little bit more out of the center. Okay. Going. All right, pretty good there. Now, anytime I'm working with things that are like a juicy, produce or anything like that, I'm typically going to have a clean towel with me to try to keep my hands and my tools dry. And that just is kind of a safety measure because I don't want to risk cutting myself with something slipping out of my hand. Okay. All right. I'm gonna peel this one up and then I'll show you slicing. Just a second. I have my headphones on. I cannot even hear the oven going, so I'm a little skeptical. Like, did it shut off? Good. So what I'm using today, the two types of apples, I guess I should share that, is Honeycrisp apples. That's the red-skinned ones that I'm using. I really like Honeycrisp because they tend to be juicy, and I like their flavor. It's just, it's always like a nice sweet flavor. I prefer this to maybe a standard red apple. To me, those don't have a lot of flavor, but these guys are always good. So this is definitely apple season, right? In the fall, we start to see a lot more variety in the grocery store and the prices get cheaper. That's because they're in season, okay? So I'm using that, and I'm also using Granny Smith. The Granny Smith I like as a contrast because they're so tart. They just are really, nice and kind of sharp. They make your face pucker up a little bit, right? Okay. So I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna slice my apples in half, okay? And then I'll show you kind of how the mandolin works. Right. So I might have to adjust my blade, but what's gonna happen is there's a blade right here, and I'm gonna slice the apple, and it's gonna come out the bottom in strips, okay? So this mandolin comes with a guard. This is to protect your fingers. You hold it right here, and you never put your hand anywhere near that blade. There are some mandolins that don't have guards, and you would be literally, you would be running your hands right here. So dangerous. So if working with a mandolin like that, it would be really essential that you were using a cut glove. That is a great way to lose the tip of a finger through a mandolin, okay? So let's do a couple of these and see if the thickness is right. What this does, this cool guard, is it lets me sort of pierce the apple like that, and then I can run the apple on the mandolin. My hands are always protected, but I can also push. Like when the apple's too far stuck up inside that guard, I can give it a little push on this handle and get more of it to come out. Whoop, off part of my apple. I'll show you guys these slices. Okay. So now I have slices like this. And those are, I actually like that thickness. That's gonna work for me pretty good. Looks like almost potato chip thickness. I like that. So I'm gonna stick that back in my water. Happy with those. You can see I have a couple other apples that I've cored, but I haven't finished with yet. So I've got quite a few apples to cut up. Okay. So I'm gonna cut apples. I think I've got about maybe 3 or 4 minutes left on my shortbread before I check it. So feel free to work on your menu for a couple minutes while I just continue to slice apples. Oh, I hear my buzzer. I better get over there as soon as I finish this apple and check on my crust. I know this shortbread's not going to be very brown, like it's going to be very lightly colored, and then it's going to continue cooking once I put the apples on it. Yeah, I like these. Good. I had to adjust. At first I was having like paper thin, and then I got it on one round where it was too thick. but I like this. I like this kind of potato chip thickness. Okay. I got all my apples hanging out in their citrus water. Okay. Let me check the oven, guys. I'll be back with you in just a moment. I'm gonna give it about 2 minutes. It looks pretty good, but I wanna firm it up maybe a touch more. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to my mandolin. Keep going here. See if the Honeycrisp sliced nicely. Good. Sometimes at the end of the mandolin, I get chunks that it's just not enough like product to go through the slicer correctly. So I may throw those to the side and see if I really need them later. Okay. Might not. Just like with anything that I'm producing, especially for other people, I want the best product that I can. If I was, just making this like for my family's supper, I wouldn't care as much about the presentation of it, but it's for others, right? So I'm going to serve this, even if I was serving it, at a special dinner for my family, or we were having grandparents over or something, I would want to make sure it was a little nicer. Okay. All right. All these guys. Okay. All right. So this is going to take me a couple minutes. Again, you guys feel free to work on your menu. I will give you a verbal cue when we're ready to move on. Okay. Just need to pick a little bit out of the center. I left a little bit of that tough stuff in there. Start putting my big pieces right there. Okay. I'm gonna go pull my shortbread now. I'm quite sure it's done. I'm gonna pull it and put it on the next table, and I'll show it to you. Okay. I also have to turn the oven up now to 350. Like once I have the crust done, the oven will go at a higher temperature. Okay. So 1. 2. Look good. Okay. Getting hotter. Whew. I'm going to show you guys the little one because it's easier for me to hold when we have one pot holder. So this is what the crust looks like right now. It's not brown. I wouldn't even say it's golden brown. I would call it kind of a couple shades under golden brown. It's a pale brown. It's not cooked all the way through for sure. Like it's still doughy to the touch, but it's starting to set. And that's kind of the point right now. It's like, let it set before we put some kind of juicy apple filling on it, right? So I'm gonna let it continue to set up and keep trucking on the apples. Okay. All right, so a few I have to peel. I like making, working with apples. I like to eat apple pie, things like that, but it is time consuming. It's nice when you have like a friend in the kitchen with you, somebody who can peel while you chop or vice versa. Cut it on me. Also, another thing you'll see on the screen right now is I'm using a trash bowl, which I really love to use because it keeps my station clean. Even at home, I always grab a bowl and use it as my trash bowl. So I'm not stuck like making a big mess all over the counter. It just keeps things tidy. Also keeps things a little safer, not to have just garbage everywhere. Okay. All right, so I've got those two. I'm gonna do one more before I stop and peel. Okay, I've got this big, pretty red apple here. Admit someone. All right, here we go. Okay. Try the peeling. Even like you might notice, look how bruised this is. Can you see all those brown spots? It really doesn't matter at all for the purposes of baking. If you want to bake a fruit, it really doesn't matter if it's bruised. It doesn't matter if it's like on its last leg, because when you bake it, it's going to get so soft anyway, you'll never know. And it really won't affect the flavor. So sometimes that's, you know, the most economical thing to do is like go in your fridge and see what's about to be bad, you know, like what's gotten soft, what are you not interested in really eating anymore, and turn it into a baked good. That's the same. Even there's some vegetables that you can bake like that. Like for example, zucchini, that's starting to get kind of grody. I mean, you might not like zucchini anyway, but you can turn it into zucchini bread, which is actually pretty yummy. Similar to banana bread, right? Add a lot of sugar to it. The zucchini provides the moisture, and then you got something yummy out of something you didn't really want to eat previously. Okay, I'm getting close. I'm gonna just go for this last guy here. And then I'll show you with the water. I'm gonna end up draining it pretty well, maybe drying it with some paper towel. Going from there. Okay. All right, finally, last apple to peel. Get this guy. I'll show you also when I finish peeling this, how you could do this with a knife. So if you were gonna make apple pie at home, or you were gonna make apple pie bar or anything like that, I'll give you an overview of how you can do that with a knife, since you possibly don't have a mandolin, and you don't need a mandolin. A lot of times I don't use one. I just use my knife. And that's one thing I really love about cooking is when you learn to use that chef's knife, you're so set. You can do just about anything. I actually kind of prefer it. I like doing things by hand, usually more than by machine. But I've already started slicing these real thin, so I need to kind of finish the same thickness of the apple so they cook at the same rate. But I will show you a little, you know, how to do it. All right. Whew, thank goodness. Okay. Sure. All right. So I'm going to save this guy and show you by hand how to do him. Okay. And I'll just go ahead real quick and slice up these others on my mandolin. So I got to admit someone. Okay. So keep things tidy. All righty. Let's do these four real quick. Get on with it. Okay, more. Okay. Water. This went pretty good all the way to the end. Not bad. You might be concerned, like, see how brown that is. Again, it's not really a big deal because we're going to bake it. We're no longer going to see the brownness. If you were going to do anything with these apples, like you wanted to serve them on a fruit tray, it would It's pretty important to make sure that they soak in this acidic water for a little while, because they totally prevented browning. And browning just happens when oxygen hits it. The process is called oxidization. So when oxygen hits the cut fruit, right, it wants to turn down. Okay, I'm gonna get that in the water. Ooh, we got a lot of apples right here, you guys. Wow. Okay. Well, let me take this last guy. I'll do half of it by hand and half of it on the mandolin. So I'm gonna cut them down. I can see I left a little bit of stuff in the middle. There we go. All right. So if I want to cut this for a pie, what I'm probably going to do is cut it in half like that. Okay, so I have like half of the core here. And then I'm going to lay it down. And I'm going to make thin slices this way. Okay, so I want to make sure that I'm using my claw grip. And then I'm going to use like this knuckle as a guide. Like the blade of my knife is going to touch my knuckle. And that's my guide that I'm not going to cut myself. Okay. And I can also keep things pretty thin. Now it's about to get too small to hold, and we have to turn it. You can see that's pretty thin. That might even be thinner than what I have a mandolin on. Like that's pretty good thin apples if you're looking for a thin apple. Okay, so you can absolutely do that entirely by hand. When it gets too thin, like I can't really put my claw on that anymore. It's not thick enough. I'm gonna go ahead and lay it down flat and go in an opposite direction. Yes, the pieces are smaller. That's okay. Right. Okay. All right, one more. I'll throw it on the mandolin. I'll drain these and we will get going. Clean that off. It's a little bit wet. All right, last bit. So I'm gonna put my mandolin aside. I'll clean it after the class. Board aside. Wipe my table up a little bit. I'm gonna discard these pieces. I don't think I need them. I have so much apple. I'm gonna throw them in my trash bowl. And then I am going to drain these apples and dampen them, pat them down with some paper towel, try to dry them a bit more. Okay. So I'm gonna go to the sink, colander, drain these guys. Ooh, there's a lot of them. Okay. Yeah, there's a whole lot of them. All right, so now I'm just returning them in the colander over their bowl here. Yeah, there you go. Okay. Actually, I think what I'm gonna do is get a clean kitchen towel real quick because I can absorb a lot more moisture working with a clean kitchen towel than a paper towel. And it's earth friendly, right? Okay. All right. Okay, got my towel. I'm gonna give these guys another couple shakes. Try to get water out of them. And then I'll drain them. There's a lot of apple here. Okay, I'm gonna show y'all what I did when I was adjusting the mandolin, just so you can really see the difference between how thick was too thick. So this is one when I was making adjustments. It's pretty thick. And this is one, like look at the difference between those two. See it, right? So this guy is gonna take too long to cook compared to these guys. So I'm gonna just pick through and sort those out real fast. There's a couple of them, not many though. Okay. That's another one. This might be my morning snack later, those big fat ones. All right, I think we're looking pretty good. So in my recipe, it tells me to make the apple filling by combining the sliced apples with the flour, sugar, cinnamon, nutmeg. I added cardamom and toss it together until the spices are evenly coated. So I'm gonna grab actually a really big bowl because I have so many apples here. Toss like that. This part of apple pie making sometimes in the past has like thrown me for a loop. I can remember being really young, like in high school, making an apple pie and didn't quite come out right. Like it wasn't as moist as I wanted it to be in the center, things like that. I didn't totally understand how it works, but the apples themselves, even besides the fact that they were in water, the apples are really wet, right? They have a lot of water. They're made up of a lot of water, just like most plants and fruits and vegetables and plants. Sorry, I got a couple more, like 6 slices there. There we go. So kind of the juiciness of the apples will combine with these dry ingredients as they cook to release some moisture. Ooh, a couple lemon seeds. Check those out. Lemon seeds, if you guys have ever eaten them accidentally in something, they're very bitter. Not pleasant to chomp down on one of those. All right, so I've got my apples here. This is my measurement, 3 times what was called for. So to match my 3 times as many apples. So I'm gonna put it on the apples and then I'm just gonna give it a big toss and throw it on the pan. Okay, on top of the shortbread. So I've got a spoon. This will be a good tool. The moisture from the apples should kind of start helping this floury mixture stick a little bit. And I just want to really toss it until it sticks. I might even use my hands. Don't forget your hands are really your best tool, right? Your original kitchen tool is your hands. As long as they're clean and you're not dealing with a ready to eat product, it's fine, you can use your hands. To help you mix things, toss things, shape things. Let me get it done. Okay. That's pretty good. All right, I'm gonna pull the pans over here, the shortbread pans, and start putting on the apples. Yeah, not too hot. Okay, so I've got the big pan here, the little pan here. Let me take my ring off real quick. Get my hands dirty. All right, so let's try this. I'm gonna toss these up a little bit more just to try to separate some of them that are stuck together. Okay, so just taking my hands and kind of making sure that everything's really incorporated, the flour, cinnamon, the sugar, all that good yummy stuff. Okay. Nice. So good. Okay. And I can feel it now that I've used my hands. I can definitely feel that they're pretty well coated. They're looking good. Now this is pretty wet, right? We're gonna put it on this dry shortbread. All right, estimate maybe 2/3-ish, 1/3-ish for that one. Maybe a few more on this one. Okay. I want to get these on here. I want to kind of pack them in there. Lots of apple would be good. I'm going to definitely use my hands here to kind of finagle things. Put the apples where I want them to be. Make sure they cover really well the entirety of the shortbread. I don't want to leave any holes where there's no apple. Pretty good to me. This one might be even a little fuller. That's good. I actually think if I repeated this, I might do an extra apple or 2 because I would not mind if those apples were super mounded up. I mean, it spreads and it covers, but it's not a thick covering. Okay, all right, so I've got that covered. Now I'm gonna do a quick rinse of my hands. I'm gonna show you the streusel, like the crumble that goes on the top, and then I'm gonna get these in the oven. Give me just one moment, please. Oops, crash. Okay, so the streusel requires cold butter. I went ahead and cut it and I put it in the fridge. Okay. I've got 12 tablespoons, that's 1.5 sticks of cold butter prepared here. So I'll show you the topping. I already made the mixture yesterday. So I have combined in here brown sugar, oats, like, you know, oatmeal before it's cooked. Excuse me. I've got some cinnamon, some flour, and the last step is going to be to take all this cold butter, drop it in here, and then basically I'm going to use my hands to combine it until it almost feels like wet sand. So the butter is going to do a couple things. Of course, it's going to melt. So it's going to add, like, you know, fat, which is flavor. It's going to add fat and taste to the apples, but it's definitely going to help this little crispy stuff to get golden brown, get crispy, but to also soften it. Like, it's going to kind of cook in the butter, if that makes sense. So this is definitely not a diet recipe. This is like a Thanksgiving special item. Okay. So I've got all this butter. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut in the butter. That's the cooking term, cut in the butter. I could use a tool for this. I could use a pastry blender. The little handheld tool looks like a half moon. Almost looks like a whisk cut into a half moon shape. I could use a couple of butter knives and like crisscross them like this. But again, I'm just a big proponent of clean hands. Okay. All right, that's a lot of butter. So I'm going to get in here and I'm going to start smushing. It's my best technical term. Okay. So I'm going to take and smush. And it's kind of a lot. And the butter's really cold. And we want the butter to be cold because it's gonna, in the oven, it's gonna release steam. It's gonna, the properties are a little bit different than if it was, you know, soft or even melted butter. So we're gonna turn this into pebbly, like small pebbles, a little bit bigger than wet sand. I said wet sand before, and maybe that's not the most accurate description. If you've ever made biscuits by hand, this is super similar. Same process, we're cutting fat, which is butter, into like a flour substance. You guys, biscuits are the easiest thing to make if you've never made them. It's literally 3 ingredients: self-rising flour, butter or Crisco. I like to use Crisco shortening, and then milk. And it's basically a similar technique to this. You have your flour in your bowl, and then you put your butter or your Crisco in there, kind of get in with your hands and mix it up. Then you stir in a little bit of milk, form your biscuits, bake them, and have delicious side dish to dinner or breakfast food or however you like to eat them. Okay, so it's getting there, but it definitely, the butter needs to get smaller. So I need to work on, I need to keep going, like kind of smushing it. And there's a lot of the dry powdery substance. There's a lot of the sugar and oat substance that does not have butter contacting it. And I want as much as possible so I don't end up with dry places on my topping. Like after it bakes, I don't want it to taste like, ooh, there's some oats and sugar. I want it to taste like, there's some crunchy, buttery, golden brown crispiness. It's always the goal. Okay, so I'm gonna finish this. I'm gonna sprinkle it on top, get these in the oven. And then in this class, we're gonna kind of wrap things up and come to a stopping point after this. And once I clean up and these get close to being done baking, I'm going to make caramel. And I'm going to drizzle that on top of the bars once they come out of the oven and cool a little bit. So you could absolutely eat these bars without the caramel. They would be delicious. But if we're going to go to all the trouble to make this, you know, fantastic dish, why not blow it out? Let's go all the way, right? And caramel was kind of the theme of the week, even though we're rolling over to next week now. Okay. All right. Now that's looking a lot better. Like I don't really feel any dry patches anymore. Everything feels kind of smushy with butter. Okay. So again, it's kind of hard to do, but I'm sort of guesstimating 1/3, 2/3. So I'm going to crumble over the top. I want to try to cover everything as much as I can. You can absolutely top a pie this way. It's delicious. You know, like some pies, like an apple pie, you would think, oh, it needs a top crust, right? Maybe you've even seen a lattice crust on an apple pie, the crisscross. Yes, but if you don't want to do a top crust, you can do something like this. It just adds a little more texture because those oats, like once they brown in the oven, they'll get a little crunchy. So that's kind of a nice like trade-off or a nice textural change, right? Like we've got that nice flaky dough, and then you've got kind of a crunchy, crispy, browned, sweet oaty topping. This would also be a great place to add nuts. So if you like to have, you know, nuts and baked goods, it would be really delicious if you mixed in chopped pecans or chopped walnuts with your crumble ingredients. That would be yummy. If you didn't want to make caramel, but you wanted like a little extra drizzle before you serve this, I would also strongly suggest honey. That would be a great thing to use. Okay. I'd like to add a little more, but I want to make sure I can get plenty on both of these. So I'm going to go back over here and treat this pan correctly before I steal all the rest of the crumble to the big pan. A little corner undone here. Okay. All right. That's pretty good. Let me go back in here. Sometimes on recipes like this, like I know I like a lot of topping, so I might even make more. You know, like double the topping or do 1.5 the amount of topping. Okay, pretty well covered. So we have these two pans. Now, in theory, this one should cook faster because it's smaller. So I'm gonna have to watch the oven. I've got the streusel on. Let me clean my hands real quick, pop these in the oven, and I'll be right back with you guys. All right, put my ring on so I don't lose it. My big pan and my little pan. Here we go. Good luck. One and two. All right, now I just need to check on the times on my recipe. So my recipe, flip the page. Okay. So it says 30 to 35 minutes for that 8x8 pan. So I'm probably going to start looking at mine at the 25-minute mark. So I'm going to set my temperature before I do anything else so I don't get distracted, and then I'll be right back. Okay. Let's see. 25 minutes. All right. So let me give you, since you won't see the finished product in first period, let me go ahead and kind of explain what you can expect. I'll be happy to share pictures of it with you. I can post one on Schoology. So this is going to come out of the oven probably in 30 minutes time. The 9x13 might take longer to come out of the oven. But what has to happen after that is they have to cool. So they're supposed to cool to room temperature. And then ideally, they are supposed to get put in the refrigerator. So they chill like really firm in the fridge. And then we use the parchment paper to pull them out of the pan. And we can slice them pretty clean with a knife once they're cold, like if they're really set up. So when I get to the point that I'm ready to slice them, that's when I'm gonna take my homemade caramel. I'm probably gonna take a fork rather than a spoon. I'm gonna kind of like whip the caramel up, and I'm gonna do big drizzles on top. I could, if I might do this actually, if I had a clean empty squeeze bottle, kind of like when we were doing plating, I could also use a squeeze bottle and get kind of a thicker caramel ribbon. But sometimes I like how organic and natural it looks when you just use a fork. You don't have any fancy tools, and you kind of just get the caramel drizzled all over the top of the item. So that's going to be the conclusion of these bars. For my first period class, okay, I'm going to stop recording for a second and talk to you guys about your day and your week. All right, hang on real quick.